stretch it deft and start a song. And give me voice and me a damn fine song, and it won't.
In this video, I want to discuss the locked herringbone, a better herringbone. I really prefer the locked herringbone over a baseball stitch or any other stitch because of its unique quality in that the stitch is a locking stitch. And also you can work the seam. If the seam starts to helix one way or the other around whatever you are leathering, especially an eye, by manipulating the way that you pull the stitch, you can bring that seam back into true alignment. You can see that your measuring piece has to be cut from the same piece of leather so that the widths, thicknesses, etc. are the same. Here we can see that it is a little bit too long, that the ends are already butting up, and there's no way you could really get that piece of leather tight. So I'm going to make a quick cut on the piece of leather. Once again, it's an inexact science, and you just want to trim a little bit and see how it goes. Now that's looking a lot better. I usually, as a rule of thumb, will trim so that I have a gap about the thickness of the leather that I am leathering. I'm going to talk about a couple of the tools. You naturally need your knife, but for cutting leather, I prefer using a Stanley knife or even one of these handy scalpels. Work great. So get your straight edge. I'm going to be cutting that top edge. And remember, the bottom one's already perpendicular or parallel and perpendicular to the marks that I made. So now when I'm cutting leather, I don't cut really hard at once. I do a series of 5 or 6 light passes. That prevents the knife from dragging through the leather and actually slightly stretching it. This is critical on thin leather. This is pretty thick leather, but even still, if you do it that way, it makes for a nice, clean edge. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is to mark for the holes using the jogging wheel. I'm going to measure down about either 1/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch, depending upon the thickness of the leather. This one here, I'm going to go down about a 1/4 of an inch, which should be fine. On thin leather, you don't want to have too little material between the hole and the edge because it can tear through quite easily. This leather, once again, is very thick, so 1/4 inch should be more than sufficient. So I did my 2 tick marks at a 1/4 inch. I'm going to get my straight edge, and I will grab my jogging wheel and run it down the length. Now I always want to start on the same side, going, in this case, from right to left. So at the bottom, when I do the jogging wheel, I'm going to want to start here going that direction and not the other way. So now after you've done the jogging wheel on both sides, you can see the little impressions that it left. I'm going to want to probably punch every other hole on this size leather. Once again, it's a judgment call, but you can see if every other hole will probably do well. So I'm going to grab my leather punch. I want to go down to as small a hole as possible. So probably be using a number 14 or number 15 sail needle on this. So let me do a test punch here. That might still be a little bit too big. I'm going to take it down to the very lowest punch on this leather punch, and that should do it. So now I'm going to do a punch on the one side on both the top and the bottom so that I have a registration. I know which direction I'm starting from. And I'm just going to work my way down the leather, punching every other hole on both sides. Holes punched. Now it's time to actually do the beveling. And this is where that handy dandy beveling tool will help out. You can see this one's a little dull. I could sharpen it on a stone. But I want to get an angled edge, about a 45 degree, as you can see there. And what that does is, when it wraps around, that angled edge helps the stitches to lie flat. And everything is about preventing chafe. I guess sailors are always into preventing chafe and bad beer. But so you're going to want to use your beveling tool and go over all 4 sides. etc. If you don't have a beveling tool, you can use a scalpel or a Stanley knife or a sharp knife, and it's just a matter of lining your piece of leather along an edge and just slowly dragging the knife, the sharp knife, along the edge to get that bevel. As you can see here, it's not that hard, and it's actually fairly fast, and after you've done it a while, you can get quite good. Once that's done, you want to make sure that both the start and the finish, the ends are beveled as well, and all those little corners, those four corners. This beveling prevents the leather, as I mentioned earlier, from curling back and from possibly after a couple of years looking pretty bad. So here you can see we've got nice bevels along all the corners. Once you have the holes cut and everything, all the beveling is done, it's time to bring the leather over to the piece of wire. You can see this is going to be quite stiff and a little bit hard to work with because there is no oil, because as I mentioned, I didn't want that to interfere with visually seeing what's happening. So I'm going to have to work the leather back and forth to try and make it supple enough to go on the wire. The other thing I'm going to do is use these little nippers that you can see here. A couple of these wee nippers will certainly make life a lot easier and help in keeping the seam nice and straight. So put the leather where you want it to go on the piece of wire. Once again, this is just a short demonstration piece. I always work from my left to my right, so I'm going to be putting these nippers on towards my start point. So you can see these nippers are quite easy, just a little figure 8 overhand knot and pass through and come up around, forming a bite. What you're doing is creating a little purchase here. Once you have the leather in position, it's time to choose your needle. Like I say, for this particular leather job, I could use a number 15 to be fine. And I'm going to want to use sail twine, and I'm going to spool off 2 full fathoms, which will make about one fathom on the needle. I don't want to have too much thread because I don't want to spend a lot of time pulling thread through. Once I have the needle threaded, I want to put a little stopper knot, as you can see here, and I want to pass it through the either side, either the far side or the near side, depending upon your preference of either working to your right or to your left. As you can see, I like working from my left to my right. I'm standing on the far side, so I'm going to do my stopper knot on the near side towards me. I'm going to lay the tail alongside the leather so it's captured, and then I'm just going to do 1 or 2, usually 2 little figure 8 passes with a final overhand pass to seat the leather at the start to get a good tight start. So you can see I'm pulling it through. Now I will try and cinch it up, and you want to make sure everything looks good at the very beginning so that you have a nice start. Once again, this leather is real dry, so pulling it together is going to be a little difficult at the beginning. It should, as we go down the leather, get easier. So I've got my figure 8. Now I'm going to go back through that far hole just for the start. Now, there are different ways of doing the start, and that's not part of this herringbone. However you have done your start in the past, just feel free to continue doing it that way. But you can see here I'm starting with a standard herringbone. So I've got a couple of passes. I sink the stitches, pull it tight, and that is your classic herringbone. It's going, the thread, the sail twine is going across, and then I am going to feed the needle through the hole on the side opposite me. You can see I'm on this side, I'm going to pass it on the side opposite. I'm working once again from my left to my right. I'm going to pull the stitch through. Now on a standard herringbone, I would sink it all the way through. I would put my second stitch on the side nearest me. I would angle the needle so that it was on the backward side of the hitch, and then pull it forward. You can see that it creates the standard herringbone. A locked herringbone we don't want to pull that first bite all the way through. So as you can see, I've gone on through the opposite side, and now I'm going to back that first little overhand pass. There you go. Just watch. And instead of doing the standard herringbone going to the left, I'm going to go through that bite. So now when I sink that hitch tight, it's going to draw it together perpendicular, and it's also going to lock the stitch. There we go. So now pass it through the hole opposite you. As you can see here, pass it through. Do not pull the bite all the way through. Just use your finger, etc. Just leave a little bite. Now go through the hole on the side that you're standing and through the bite. Always on the back side of the direction you're going, not on the forward side. Once you have that on the back side, pull the twine through. You can see I pull a little bit on that side. I can hold the stitch and then draw it tight. Yeah, that one occasionally, your twine doesn't cooperate, but okay, there I'm sinking the stitch, and when my arm gets out of the way, you can see how I can let go of the stitch and it's locked. It's not going to back out. It is a real handy stitch. So we're just going to do this working along, and the other beautiful thing here is that you can draw the leather together. If the seam starts working one way or the other, if the seam is no longer straight, it starts helixing, you can pull either the side that is closest to you, the stitch, to work the leather back over to you, or you can pull the other bite and draw the leather the opposite direction. So here you can see that I'm going, well, let's get these those are the initial tails. We'll just stick them up out of the way. Occasionally, there we go. All right, so I've not pulled the bite tight yet. I've gone under the bite, and I'm going on the back side of the way that I'm traveling. This way I can pull and I can angle my seam. If it's starting to angle up towards the camera, towards the far side, I can really pull on this side and bring it back down that way. If it's going the other way, I cannot pull as hard on that side and pull harder on the side to me and move it the other way. So I can actually steer the stitch. This is a very, very handy stitch, and I hope that you'll like it as much as I do. So I'm going to pull down here. I'm going to just hold the tension. Doesn't take much. Draw the twine through, and then pull the other way, and it's locked. So once again, I'm going to go the hole opposite me. Don't pull it all the way through. The hole on my side and then through the bite. And then either pull the bite or the initial stitch, depending upon if you want the stitch, the seam, to move to the left, to the right, up or down. It is very handy. And that's it. And by doing that, we can keep that seam absolutely top dead center and prevent it from rolling off. It really is a handy, handy stitch. Now let's say this is the end. I want to do my finish because once again, this is just a demonstration. I'm going to do my standard stitch like I was going to do a locked herringbone, except I'm going to go underneath the last stitch, and I'm going to go underneath the stitch before that. Basically, this is just forming a back stitch, your standard back stitch. You want to sink it once or twice and then cut it off. And very important thing is, once you have it all done, is to grab your spike and to roll your spike up and down the stitches to seat them. You really want to have the stitches not proud at all. And once they have seated into the leather, that's basically it. And you have a nice locked herringbone. And I hope you like it as much as I do. It's a great stitch. Thanks for watching.